You know, I understand that like art is free expression and you're allowed to invoke or have any imagery almost as long as it's not bodily harm as an artist in your videos, your visualizers, whatever. But it gets to a point, Carson. It gets to a point where I can't defend it. It gets to a point where I can't even really listen to it. What's going on, guys? It's Jay Ninja here, and today we are going to be talking about Ken Carson, but more specifically, More Chaos, an album by Ken Carson, his fourth studio album, following up on the success of A Great Chaos, which dropped October of 2023, and then after teasing More Chaos with singles like Overseas during the bottom half, or the second half, I should say, of 2024, he finally dropped it April 11th, 2025. Now, in terms of the album itself, and this is the main point of the video today before we kind of dive into his whole gimmick or the opium gimmick, and I'm going to make an entirely separate video about that in music in general. I struggle with this album. And the reason I struggle with this album, before we even talk about Ken's performance, it's because of the mixing on this album. There are a lot of insane beats in terms of, I don't even know how you thought about that. I hear a beat like Dismantled and I'm like, dude, how do you think about this stuff? I hear Live Leak, I hear Thanks, I hear all these great grails and leaks that are dropped. And I'm happy as somebody who liked the way those leaks were sounding. But the issue is hearing them in good audio quality now, they don't sound that good. You know, the way I kind of described this album to myself while I was listening to it, I got a kick out of this. I said it was like ghetto Sega Genesis trap music. And it's not ghetto because it's black culture, absolutely not, but it's ghetto because the mixing is very janky. It's not crisp, it's not clean. I went back to songs like Fighting My Demons or Singapore, Green Room, Succubus off of A Great Chaos that were also very bass heavy and very all over the place in terms of the vocality of Ken and how he was using his voice and the instrumentals in general, but it was a lot more crisp. The issue with More Chaos is that it is more chaos. It's more chaotic. The beats are a lot more out there. There's a lot more elements. There's a lot more WTF moments as a listener, not even from the lyrical content, just from the instrumentals alone, which is great on songs like Live Leak, on songs like Confetti, on songs like Thanks, on songs like Dismantle, which is probably my favorite one off the album right now. But the problem is listening to these is not the best experience. I played this album in the car. It felt better listening to it with the bass in the car. I think the bass, ironically, was a little bit weaker. I wanted more bass. But listening to this album with headphones, my ears were hurt halfway through. I had to take a break just because my ears hurt. And that's not a normal reaction when listening to music. I can turn my music all the way up, say I listen to it for a couple hours, maybe an hour at a time. Then my ears like, okay, I might need a break. It shouldn't be the first half of a 21-track album of like a 50-minute album where my ears are like, whoa, what is going on? These are songs that, for the most part, seemed completed, but there were a lot of songs on this album, about half of it, where it didn't feel complete. It felt like Ken had no vision in terms of a hook. It felt like a freestyle. You know how Juice WRLD used to freestyle most of his albums, but somehow would find his way back to the hook? This is how this album kind of felt like. It felt like a long, rambling freestyle for certain elements of the album. It felt like he was coming up with things to say, a lot more punch-ins. There wasn't a narrative being fitted into a track. It was like somebody's pouring water into a cup and then the water just overflows and they keep pouring water in the cup even though the cup has clearly reached its capacity. That's how some of these beats felt. It felt very like, oh, we're gonna add every single element. More chaos, guys, which is great, but then it gets to a point as a listener where it's too much chaos. And like I said, this album still did have some highs. Again, you've got Live Leak, that beat switch is crazy. You got Trap jumping like Jordan. Trap jumping like Josh. Shout out Ja Morant. Crazy celebration, by the way. I will be pulling this out on the basketball court the next time I hoop. I just want to let everybody know that right now. But songs like 200 Cash, Diamonds, it was just like, dog, what are you doing? He didn't know where the song was going to end, and most of these songs on this album faded out instead of having a clear beginning, middle, and end. He's still rapping, and they're just like, all right, bro, we just going to turn the volume down, and it's going to end. It didn't give me a chance to really think about what I just heard because all of a sudden, boom, next track right here. It's like, bro, I can't pause. I can't think about, oh, did I like that song? Did I not like that song? And when you have that pattern over and over and over again, and you're not even giving me time to really process what I just listened, and then on top of that, a majority of what I'm listening to isn't mixed well, it makes the listen hard. It makes the listen, like I said, my ears were hurting. It makes the listen enjoyable for certain songs like Confetti, like Down to Earth, like Dismantled. He had a nice little run where he was mixing in the melodic bag, also with the insane, again, ghetto Sega Genesis trap music instrumentals. So he was doing his thing for some of these tracks. But on other tracks, I was like, bro, this is bad. You're rapping, you're reusing the same bars. If I gotta hear another bar about that's not your girl, she step outside, she Ken Carson piece. Brother, you talking about money, clothes, women, drugs, all right. At least do it in a way that's different enough to where I'm not thinking back to old songs like, hey, ain't you say that already? Like, how you stealing bars from yourself? Like, I almost respect it, but it's like, all right, bro, we gotta do better. So overall, did I like more chaos? This probably gotta sit with me more before I make an astounding opinion or a real opinion on it. Also, that I Am Music a month later video is dropping soon, as well as we're coming up on the 1 month anniversary. It's so corny to say 1 month anniversary, but I've seen college couples do 2-week anniversary. So hey, we're gonna call it 1 month later. Not an anniversary, but 1 month later. It had highs and lows like any album. I think it does have to sit with me a little more. I think my biggest issues with More Chaos were the mixing, were the repetitiveness in Ken's nature, and also just vocally I couldn't really understand him because some of these beats were so girthy and so pause. Wow, okay, I'm just gonna leave that in there. Some of these beats were so muddy, and some of these beats had so much size to the You know what, I'm just gonna say the beats had a lot going on. They had a lot of instrumentation. They had a lot of instrumentals. They had so much going on to the point where I was like, dog, I can't ingest all of this. And the mixing's bad, so I can't even appreciate it. Comparing this to an album like Lifestyle by Yeet, which dropped October of last year, there were a lot of beats on Lifestyle where I'm like, dude, how do you come up with this? But everything was mixed so cleanly. They still condensed it into one package. They still kept the water in the cup. Carson had some great ideas, had some great moments, but I couldn't appreciate them because he didn't keep the water in the cup. Now, before I do wrap up this video, I do want to talk about what I mentioned in the beginning of the video, that this whole opium gimmick, this let's use demonic imagery gimmick, why are we doing this in a Big 25? Because my issue with it is not just of the imagery. Yes, I'm Christian, but that's besides the point. I'm not even talking about this from a vantage point of, oh, you're offending God, and that's wrong. I'm not coming at it from that perspective. I'm coming at it from a perspective, and I'm going to make a separate video on this. But my issue is when people do this in music, whether it's Lil Nas X dressing up as Jesus, whether it's Doja Cat dressing up as a demon in her video, whether it's upside down crosses or pentagon chains, you're doing it as a gimmick. It doesn't actually add anything to your art. You're not making bigger social commentary. That's why I kind of laughed when Carson got pulled over for speeding and he was like, oh, my cross upside down because the church corrupt. Like, you don't believe that. Like, we all know the upside down was because St. Peter got crossed upside down. He said he did not want to get crossed like Jesus, but that's besides the point. The point is, when you are going to invoke this imagery and you are going to channel these things in your art, regardless of how I feel about it, regardless of whether or not I feel comfortable with it, I honestly don't. I can't really go back and listen to most of this album because it's like, bro, I don't rock with that. But that's besides the point. The point is, if you are going to do that stuff, it has to have a bigger point narratively. You talking about I'm a vampire, that's cool. That has nothing to do with pentagon chains, brother. And again, like I said, I'm going to make a much broader video on that topic, but it's just like, dog, you making it hard to even look at your stuff objectively. It's just like, dog, y'all don't even have to do this to make the music you make because you're not even talking about anything most rappers don't talk about who just wear a right side up cross. Oh, what are we doing, man? What are we doing? With that being said, though, guys, that is going to do it for me today. Few videos coming up in the chamber. I've been busy with school, but I'm locked back in now. I'm locked and loaded, and we're gonna have a lot more videos coming out. As always, if you enjoyed the content, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Follow these socials in the description. Follow the pod. And again, did I hate More Chaos? No, but there are definitely moments in there where the mixing's bad, where it's repetitive, where he's repeating bars, and in general, I felt like he could have done more in terms of just making it a cleaner listen. You keep this to like 16, 17 tracks, add in a couple more melodic cuts, still have the grails, then you could have easily just had More Chaos Deluxe and just throw some of these crazy hype ghetto Sega Genesis trap beats on there. I would have been cool with that. But 21 tracks, it's a little bit long for Ken in terms of the delivery still being the same. But again, as always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you all in the next one.